Guys, welcome back to our video series of software engineering. We are going to continue with Agile methodologies. As you might imagine, I'm reading. As you might imagine, many other approaches to system analysis and design have been developed over the years. These approaches include extreme programming (XP), the Crystal family of methodologies, adaptive software development, Scrum, and feature-driven development. In February 2001, many of the opponents of these alternative approaches met in Utah in the United States and reached a consensus on many of the underlying principles their various approaches contain. This consensus turned into a document called the Agile Manifesto. This methodology shared three key principles. The first principle is focus on adaptive rather than predictive methodologies. The second principle is focus on people rather than roles. And then the third one is self-adaptive process. So what are we talking about here, guys? So what we are talking about here is we are talking about the family of agile methodology. So agile methodologies is a new approach to development. So agile methodologies propose a different approach, of development. Yes, it is based on traditional and object-oriented methodologies, but it is a new, thinking approach, is a new perspective on software development. So these methodologies here, extreme programming, Crystal, adaptive, Kanban, FDD, these feature-driven development, FDD, are various, agile methodologies that you can find out there. Now, these methodologies, originally they were not sharing the same principle. Now, these guys, the proponent of these methodologies met in Utah in 2001, led by a senior software developer called Ken Beck. So Ken Beck and these people met in Utah in 2001 and came up with an Agile manifesto. An Agile manifesto is like, I like saying that it's like the Bible of Agile developers. And they bind it in that Agile manifesto, three key principles, which are adaptive rather than predictive methodologies, focus on people rather than roles, and then self-adaptive process. So what are we talking about here? When we say focus on adaptive rather than predictive methodology, it means that in traditional development, like 20 years ago, what we were doing is to try to think about everything at the outset, at the beginning. So you plan everything perfectly and you think everything is going to be the way you have planned it. But you agree with me that, things rarely happen the way you have planned, even in our daily life. You get that? So the idea of these agile guys is, to recognize that things do not always happen the way you have planned. So you can plan for your development, but you will encounter, challenges. And what you need to do is to be adaptive. You have to adapt to the challenges you face, to overcome them. You understand that? So when you don't try to predict everything. That's not possible. You cannot foresee everything. you cannot foresee everything. So the idea is that you foresee what you can foresee, it's fine, but you recognize that things are not going to always happen the way you have foreseen them. So what you do is when you encounter challenges, you adapt together. So this is the idea. And then when we say focus on people rather than roles, means that just like we are going to see in methodologies like Scrum, we don't have fixed roles. So you focus on what people know. It means that, today you can be an analyst, but because you are also good in programming, by the way, you cannot be a good analyst. You cannot be a good analyst if you are not a good programmer. So you can be analyst today, tomorrow you are programmer. The day after you are a tester. You get that? So that's the idea here. So you focus on people, you focus on what they know rather than the roles. You don't have fixed roles. So one team member can play different roles. So you don't have fixed, roles in a team. Now, self-adaptive process means what? We know what is a process. We have defined a process as, the organization of activities or tasks into systematic, you know, steps or phases. So we have seen that we say that the software development life cycle itself is a software process, is a process because it organizes activities into, you know, uh, requirement gathering, analysis, design, coding, and so on. So this is a process. Now, when we say adaptive, adaptive is that it can adapt, it can change, you know, its behavior. It can change its behavior and adapt to a new situation. Self means, the inner self means. So now, when we say self-adaptive process means what? When we say self-adaptive process, we want to say that as you develop, as you conduct these activities in your process, in your software process, as you conduct them in your software development process, you you know you let these adapt, you let these, you left you let your developers, the team, the development team, to self adapt, you know so you let them the possibility to work the way they work, to face challenges and to overcome challenges the way they want. So what is important is that they overcome these challenges and you encourage them, to try different, you know, uh, uh, um, to try different approaches, not fixed approaches. Because when you limit someone to a methodology, you get that. When you are, you know, you are micromanaging, you know, the development, the activities of your developers. You don't let them the freedom to approach development the way they want, to adapt to the challenges the way they want. They are not very creative, and you have to recognize that the process itself, is not going to happen the way you have planned it. Yeah. So basically, these are the three principles which guide the agile methodologies. There are many. We cannot cover all of them. We are going to cover the famous one, the most famous one, which are extreme programming, XP, extreme programming, and then Scrum. Scrum. We are going to cover these two. Good. So does it? So let's start with Scrum. So what is Scrum? The quite funny name I'm reading. The quite funny name Scrum emerged from rugby, the sport rugby. When rugby players want to get an out of play ball back into lay, they move together in a big mass. The referee drops the ball and the scrum participant pass the ball backward through their legs to a waiting runner. The scrum happens quickly, it is adaptive and self-organized. So the name Scrum of the software development paradigm came certainly from these similarities also found in software development projects that are difficult to systematically plan. Instead of commanding and controlling things, Scrummers rapidly observe and come up with an adaptive solution. You get that? So the name Scrum is funny. It came from rugby. Scrum is happening in rugby. So it is a self-adaptive process. It's quick, you know, and there's no plan. You get that? So it just happens, like that. So software, the proponent of Scrum, you know, who were certainly, the big fan of rugby, adopted that name, you know, and Scrum is one of the central agile methodologies used out there now. You find it in many projects, and more and more projects are demanding for people who know Scrum. So the idea here is to have a self-adaptive process, as we have said, a self-organized process, a rapid, process, not a plan and a plan process, not a predictive process. So these are the four characteristics of Scrum. So these characteristics are also implemented in, also proposed in the Agile Manifesto. So we have individuals and interaction over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. So these are the four characteristics, of Scrum. So these are specific to Scrum, but they are borrowed from the Agile Manifesto. All of them, all these Agile methodologies borrow characteristics or principle from Scrum. So these ones are the ones tailored by Scrum. Now let's try to understand each of them. When we say individuals and interaction over processes and tools, it means we rely on the people. We rely on the development team, what they know, and the way they are communicating. Communication is a cornerstone. So we leverage on what they know. So we emphasize on communication and and their knowledge over the processes, because processes and tools are nothing if they are not used by people who know what they're doing and then who share the knowledge together. So communication is the cornerstone in Scrum, but even in all other agile methodologies. When we talk about communication, get me well. When we talk about communication, we are talking about any exchange of thought, of ideas, of experience, of document. It can be by email, it can be verbal, physically, it can be by video conferencing, it can be in a meeting, it can be, all this is communication. It can be in all format also. Communication is different from talking. You can talk to someone verbally in front of you. That is one way of communicating. but that's one channel of communication. Now we have some other channels and other techniques, of communication. So all these exchanges, you know, are what we call communication. So we rely on this communication, we rely on the interaction, we rely on the tacit knowledges people have. We don't over rely on processes, we don't rely on the development tools. Now, working software over comprehensive document. Here we want to see the prototypes. We want to see the prototypes. It's not like in traditional development where you see the prototype after 3 months or 6 months. No, you want to see it after 2 weeks. Even before development start, you have to give the user the idea how the system is going to look like, to have a look and feel, to have a look and feel. So we want to see working software. We want them to be used by end users and provide their feedback. And this feedback is used to improve the next prototype. So you don't in traditional development we used to have document as tall as the tip of iceberg. So actually people don't have time to read. People don't have time to read, guys. People they have too much to read. Can you imagine the amount of information you get in your brain, passing through your brain per day? It's totally insane. It's crazy. So you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have the TV, you have interaction, verbal interaction. You see, so it's too much information. People don't have time to read. So when you develop documentation, it's not very detailed documentation. It's a concise documentation, it's a precise documentation. But people want to see, the working software. They want to see the software. They don't mind too much about the document, They don't have time for the document. We are not saying that you should not document your processes, no. You should document them, but you have to emphasize on prototypes. They want to see prototypes. They want to use them. They want to look at them. They want to have an experience with them and express that experience. That is very useful to keep improving your prototype. Now, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. In negotiation, we have different approaches, negotiation, or different outcomes in negotiation. When you negotiate, you either want a win-win situation, or a win-lose situation. Sometimes even when both of you are totally crazy, both of you end losing. We have a lose-lose situation. So here we want a win-win situation. And how do we gain? Both gain, so that we're happy. Both parties are happy. So what you do here is you collaborate. Collaborate means working together. You work closely. So agile methodologies advocate for intensive collaboration, co-design. It means that the end user, the client, the client, is part of the development team. The client is a member of the development team. He's part of the developer. So in your development team, we have members from the client there. Yeah, so you collaborate, you co-design, you know, it's a co-creation process. So you don't want to negotiate too much, and then whenever there's a change, they request a change, you ask them, I'm a faranga. No, you should be flexible enough, to accommodate changes. So you don't want to win every time. You should let the other one win also. So it's a win-win situation. So there is there, you know, just like the last point says, responding to change over following a plan. So in agile development, we accept change. We accept change request. Whenever there's a change request, we accept it. We don't try to win every time. We accept the change. We accommodate it. We don't ask for an amendment of the contract. No, you get it. So you ask for an amendment of a contract when the change is huge, like adding a full module. But if it's just adding a few things, that will take you 1 day of work or even 2 days. It's not bad doing that. So you keep that good rapport with them. So sorry, I'm going to respond to a call. Please give me 1 minute. Hello, hello. Oui, mon frère. Ok, ok. Il n'y a pas de souci. Il n'y a pas de souci. Okay, that's fine. Mm, thank you. Mm. Yeah, sorry guys, I was taking an important call. Good. Now, responding to change over following a plan. So we have already mentioned it. We don't stick to a plan. So you respond to change. You are you welcome change. You know. So this is very important. So these are the four characteristics of Scrum. Now we have three roles. Scrum has three roles. We have the Scrum product owner, we have the Scrum master, and the development team. So what are we talking about here? Scrum product owner. He's a person who represents the stakeholder. He or she is responsible of prioritizing, writing, and maintaining user stories in the product and sprint backlog. So the Scrum product owner is the belongs to the client. For example, if we are a team developing a product for UTB, UTB is a client, and a product owner is going to be nominated from UTB and will be the product owner. Yeah, now his role is prioritizing, writing, and maintaining user stories. What are user stories? User stories are also called items. They are requirement. User stories are the requirement. We are going to see that. Now, these requirements are maintained is what we call a product backlog. Now, apart from the product backlog, we also have a sprint backlog. So a product backlog is like a container of all the user stories, all the requirements. Now, a sprint backlog is the backlog used during a sprint. A sprint is an iteration. You remember what is an iteration? An iteration is a cycle like analysis, design, coding, testing, release. That is one cycle. That is one iteration. In Scrum, we call it this a sprint. Now, The user stories you are going to develop during the sprint are maintained in a sprint backlog. But the product backlog is the overall, you know, uh, you know, uh, user stories. The product backlog contains all the user stories, means all the requirements. While the sprint backlog only contains the requirement developed during a specific sprint. Now we have the Scrum Master. He animates the team and makes sure that sprint's goals are met. So the Scrum Master is is the lead consultant, is the lead developer, is the main developer. It's like the project manager on the side of the consultant. It means if you are developing a software for you to be, you know, the lead developer from the consultant is the Scrum Master. Junior is the senior. Like if I'm developing a software with you guys, I will be the Scrum Master because I'm more experienced. You know, I'm more experienced. You can be better developer than me, and you are even better developer than me. I mean, coders, you can code than me, but I understand I understand the development process than you. I'm a better analyst than you. You get that? I'm a better project manager than you because I have managed many projects. I've been an analyst for many projects. I also coded many projects. Does it? So the role of the Scrum Master is to animate the team and guide them also. Now the rest of the guys, the developers, the analysts, the testers, the network engineers, the graphic designer, the whatever, all these people belong to the development team. So it is a team of between 4 to 6 developers who are co-located. They are co-located. Co-location, you see, co-locate. They are co-located means they are put in a same location where they can communicate, because remember we say that communication is very important. So they are put in the same location where they can share, document ideas, thought, experiences, and so on, so they can communicate. So there should not be a big team, between 4 to 6 maximum. If you have more than 6, you create different location. You can create different location. You get that? Yeah, because if you imagine you have 15 people in one location, it will be like the market of Kimirongo. So finally, they, they will not they will not do something useful. They will just be talking useless stuff. So, but when they are full, for example, in a location, they are co-located. They are full. They are more productive. They don't spend time in jokes and useless comment. So let's cover the vocabulary and artifact vocabulary of Scrum. What is a sprint? So we say that on the previous slide, a sprint is an iteration. A sprint is a fixed time period of 1 to 4 weeks. 2 weeks are preferred, during which the Scrum team is focused on delivering a chosen and prioritized list of items. From the product backlog. So what are we talking about here? We say that one cycle is a sprint. Requirement gathering, analysis, design, coding, testing, and release of the prototype. This is an iteration. It is a sprint. And at the end of that sprint, you release the prototype. And the duration of that sprint is between 1 week to 4 weeks. But personally, I prefer a sprint of 3 weeks, because you have time to produce the prototype, but they have to be between 1 to 4 weeks, not more than 4. So it means maximum after 4 weeks, you have to show a new version of the prototype. So a sprint will take 4 weeks. and that sprint has its sprint backlog. Now, which is prioritize. I'm going to talk about that. And then we have user story, which is called item. The features of the system, are requirement of end users. These features are generally translated into more comprehensive requirement. The proper way to write an item is as follows. Has a role I want, you express your goal, your need, or your desire, and the benefit, which is optional. For example, as an accountant, I would like to search and print the history of tuition payment per student so that you can add the benefit. You get it? So this is a very clear way of expressing a requirement. As an accountant, I would like to search and print the history of tuition payment per student. So then this is a user story. These are nine items. So these items are going to be loaded in the product backlog. So here you see an example of product backlog. As an authorized user, I want to create a new account. As an authorized user, I want to log in. As an authorized user, I want to log out. Create tip to purge database. As an authorized user, I want to see the list of items. As an authorized user, I want to. So these are item user stories. Now we log them in a product backlog. The product backlog has all the requirements of the entire project, and they are prioritized. You see, they are prioritized. So you start with this, you follow with this, you follow with this, you follow with this, you follow this order. You see, is a priority order. So you start with this, you follow with this, you continue with this. But the effort is different. Estimation of what? Estimation of effort or complexity. You see that the more difficult, the more complex item which will require more effort is item 8. As an authorized user, I want to set a reminder for a selected item so that I am reminded when item is due. So it is more complex than the rest. It is followed by this. As an authorized user, I want to edit the selected item. But these ones are less, complex. Generally, you already have them developed. Using system-oriented architecture, you just reuse them. You get that? This one also is not very complex. So you estimate in terms of priority, you prioritize them, and then you estimate in terms of effort. Now, the list of prioritized remaining items. So a product backlog is a list of prioritized remaining items to be achieved during the product constitutes product backlog. The product backlog is very dynamic. It is ideally created before the beginning of the project, and new stories are added to it as new requirements arise. So you don't have a fixed backlog, so it keeps growing. But it's not because you have that flexibility of letting it growing that it should you should let it grow, as crazy. So you should still manage your scope. You should still manage your scope very intelligently. Otherwise, you are going to have what we call a scope creep. A scope creep is, when you go beyond what you are supposed to do. Like in French, we say you are hors sujet. Hors sujet. So we are talking about we are talking about we are talking about food. You are talking about I don't know what, cultivating. So this is an example of backlog. So it has all the items of the project which remain to be developed, and you can keep adding and keep removing the items. Now we have also the sprint backlog, the list of items chosen from the product backlog to be achieved during a sprint constitute a backlog. That one already said it. A burn down chart. Burn down chart. The burn down is a grid yet simple visual progress card that daily displays the government stakeholders to the government stakeholders what is remaining to be done in a sprint. You use a burn down chart during a sprint, during an iteration, and you track the progress. So you track what is done and what is not done. So it is a very simple it's a very simple uh, let's see here if we can have a do we have a burn down chart? We don't have. Okay, let me try to Google something. Scrum burn down Scrum burn down chart. So let's go to images. So we see how it looks like. You see? Yeah. Can track the progress. This, for example, is so it's just a chart, which tracks the progress. Um, track the progress. In terms of total effort, is a total effort. Total effort from 0 to the effort is can be expressed, in terms of complexity, of the work in the estimation, and then the time. You see, yeah, and actual remaining point. You see, estimating remaining point. So we had 180 effort to put in, and it keeps decreasing over time. It keeps decreasing. It keeps decreasing, but after some time, you can increase the scope. The scope can increase means you can add more item. You go back up, and then you go down. You see, you go down, you go down. You see, yeah. So this is a team velo. So this one team velocity, team velocity. So the effort, what you remember is that the effort decreases. So you move from 180, you move from 180, but over time, as you progress over time, you have uh, you have items, implemented, so the effort decreases, you see, and then when you reach here, you have a jump again because you have an increase in the scope. It means you have added some more item. You get done? Yeah. So, and then you keep growing again. Now the team velocity is this. The team velocity is what? The team velocity is a measure of the amount of work, you know, is the amount of work that the team has put in, or the effort. You get that? Here the velocity is 20. So here we're moving from 180 to 160. Velocity is 20 also. So we move from 160 to 140. Here the velocity is 40. So we move from 140 to 100. But we jump again because we have increase, and anytime you can estimate the remaining work. So this is an example of burn done chart. So for each sprint you have a specific burn done chart. Now guys, let's finish with Scrum event. We call them Scrum event or Scrum meetings. Daily meetings, Scrum daily meetings. Every day, these guys meet the Scrum team, animated by the Scrum Master. They meet 15 minutes. It's a stand-up meeting. They stand and they share about what happened yesterday. Everyone will tell the experience of yesterday, and they're going to briefly say what they're planning to do today, and they are going to request for any equipment or material they would like to get, and all this is noted by the Scrum Master, who is the leader. Now we have the Scrum planning meeting. The Scrum planning meeting is to plan the sprint. They plan the sprint. Now this meeting is split in two. We have the what meeting and the how meeting. The what meeting defines what to put in the sprint backlog, the items, what items to put in the sprint backlog. So this meeting is animated by the Scrum product owner. The product owner animates this what meeting because he's the owner of the product. And then after the what meeting, he disappears. The Scrum Master and the development team remain talking about how they go about it. It's what they call the how meeting. We also have the review meeting. In this meeting, we review the prototype. At the end, that at the end of a sprint, a prototype is released. So now we inspect that prototype, we review it, and this meeting is led by the product owner because he's the owner of the product. So he's there to check whether you have developed everything properly, as per the requirement. And then this one is a retrospective meeting. So this is a self-evaluation. What when? So the Scrum Master and the development team are going to discuss at the end. At the end of the sprint, they're going to discuss, what went good, what went ugly, what went beautiful, what are the lessons learned. So the objective is to improve, the practice, in the following sprint. So guys, this is briefly about Scrum. I would like to encourage you to be certified Scrum Master. I'm certified Scrum Master. So it is a certification you can prepare in 3 weeks. It's not huge, very simple certification, and it only has a few questions, like 50 questions, I think, multiple choice. So you can take it online, and it costs like $40, like 40 Rwandan francs, maximum. So I'm encouraging you to certify as a Scrum Master and put it on your CV. It's very important. So guys, I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed these videos. So in the next video, we are going to talk about extreme programming, which is the next and the second agile methodology. So Thank you once again. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.